Hi, everyone. This is Ali Hussein Kasim from Ali Talks Tech. In this weekly roundup of tech news in Africa and across the world, we're covering four key stories. The first one is the billion shilling scandal in Kenya's SACCO sector. The second story we're covering is Revolut's announced entry into the Southern African market. The third one is, and this is the question, is there a Chinese Starlink killer out there? And the fourth story we'll be covering is Africa's turning point, a call for leadership and self-resilience in the wake of the decimation of USAID by the Trump administration. So let's move to our first key story of the day. So there's been this evolving story coming out of the Kenyan SACCO sector, Cusco, which is supposed to be the umbrella organization that brings together all SACCOs in Kenya. Huge scandal. The SACCO sector is a vital sector, an arm in the financial services ecosystem in Kenya. So, what's going on here? Here's a quick rundown of what has happened. 25.3 billion in losses. This is Cusco and Metropolitan National SACCO. How has this come about? How has billions of shillings been lost by these two organizations in the SACCO sector? 13.3 billion from Cusco. We're talking about fake deposits, ghost accounts, unauthorized withdrawals, financial misstatements, even a dead auditor, a deceased auditor signing off on audits. Surely, guys, what is going on? Then Metropolitan SACCO, 12 billion lost, inflated loan books, missing branch funds, insider loans, dubious M-Pesa transactions. Who are involved? Senior executives, rogue board members, and auditors that are exploiting weak governance. This is a huge betrayal to the public trust. This is even worse when you think about the people who least deserve to be stolen from. Working people, drivers, employees who have their hard-earned money being stolen by these rogue individuals. How has this come to happen? This is just so super unacceptable. How do we get to a point where there is such complete breakdown of governance in the SACCO sector that it has come to this? You know, I've said many times when we have discussions in the ecosystem, financial services, tech, that there is one thing that can lift the SACCO sector to levels that we've never seen before. That is lacking if we can just take care of that one thing: governance. The lack of governance in the SACCO sector makes it very hidebound in its thinking, to the extent where digital transformation is almost non-existent in many SACCOs, because digital, to a large extent, will require certain levels of governance that people don't want. However, on the flip side, if we also lack governance, that digital transformation will get to a point where stealing will be on steroids. So we are back to governance issues. How do we get to a point where we get to a recovery? We get to a situation where these things stop or get to a minimum, because human beings being human beings, we are not. We hope that we can cover all this nonsense 100%, but we can't. So how do we minimize it? Stronger oversight. Regulators like SASRA are very key in this conversation. They must enforce strict audits and governance controls. Transparency. SACCOs need financial reporting tools that are transparent and that are open, that its membership can query on the fly. Leadership ethics. How do we teach leadership ethics? How do we ensure that board members and senior management are on point when it comes to ethics? Member empowerment. Members, we must educate members. We must get them to understand that it is their right to demand transparency. Last but not least, can we think about ensuring that transformation gets to that point after we've taken care of these issues? Obviously, although it's late, we must commend the government and the authorities for taking action against these rogue players in the SACCO ecosystem. My next story is on Revolut's entry into Southern Africa. Are we going to see a game-changing conversation, a game-changing play, not just in South Africa, but across the African continent? We know that Revolut is one of the leading neobanks or digital banks in Europe and across the world. So here are the key facts. Revolut has announced its entry into the Southern African market, and they're seeking a full banking license, full, not just a neobank license, a full banking license that will allow them to do payments, will allow them to create their own financial rails, will allow them to plug into financial rails, will allow them to receive deposits, will allow them to give out loans, and allow them to offer other financial services, including crypto, because remember, South Africa is a very crypto-friendly jurisdiction. So here is how I see some of these industry impacts with Revolut's entry. So guys, when I say entry, I don't mean tomorrow, because obviously they would need to seek regulatory approval, and that takes time. Sometimes takes months, sometimes takes years. So this is gonna hit up the neobank competition in South Africa. South Africa is a very vibrant neobank market with Time Bank, Bank Zero, and Old Mutual about to launch their own neobank. They received their license sometime last year. Is there going to be pressure on traditional banks? South Africa's traditional banks are super strong. Standard Bank is one of the largest, if not the largest bank in terms of assets across Africa. There's Absa, there's also super strong, FNB and Nedbank. Will this accelerate pressure, or will it accelerate their digital transformation to compete with Revolut? I must say that South African banks are pretty savvy when it comes to digital banking. So Revolut is not going to see itself like it's a walkover. They're going to be working very hard towards that. When will we see an expansion into Africa? You've got the 4 key fintech markets across Africa. That's Kenya, my home country, South Africa, of course, where Revolut is checking in, Nigeria, and Egypt. These are Africa's 4 key fintech markets. How long before Revolut looks at these markets? What's next? Obviously, fierce competition from local and global players. South Africa's banking sector is super sophisticated. This is one African market that really has not worried too much about what we worry about across Africa when it comes to financial inclusion. Most or many South Africans have a bank account, they have a card. That's why the penetration rate of mobile money has really not been that enthusiastically embraced in South Africa, because they've not seen a need. In October, I was in South Africa and I got into this conversation with the taxi driver who was taking me to my destination, and asked him, what mobile money platform do you use? And the answer shocked me. He simply asked me, what's mobile money? What are you talking about? I don't need mobile money. I have a card, I have a bank account. So there you have it. Interesting conversations around Revolut's entry into South Africa. Now we go to my third story, which is Chinese Starlink set to launch in 30 countries. Now, before I even go into this story, there's this perception, and it might have been true years back, that Chinese brands are just copycats. They look at what happens in the West and they copy. Let me tell you guys something. Or let me tell you what Maina and Kingangi will say. Maina, let me tell you, Maina. These Chinese are not joke. They're innovative. They have a huge home market. And I think we need to stop thinking of them as just copycats. They're coming into markets very seriously. Huawei is now a major player on 5G. And in fact, other telco providers are actually copying Huawei. So it's no longer cut and dry that Chinese brands are just copycats. Then there's the other issue of their ability to cut costs, which brings me to my point of the Chinese price. The Chinese price simply means they walk into a market, they come with superior products. Yes, superior products. They are not inferior products anymore. They come with superior products and they slash you out of the market. So this Chinese company called SpaceCell has announced an entry into 30 countries to directly challenge Starlink. How is that going to work? How is that going to affect Starlink's engagement in all these countries? These are the key impact areas that I see. First, obviously, heightened competition. Secondly, affordable pricing. Thirdly, strategic advantage. SpaceX may enter markets where Starlink faces regulatory resistance, like South Africa. Rapid expansion. More often than not, and I know this is a contentious issue, but we can challenge it. More often than not, many Chinese companies who come into new markets have a strong financial backing from the Chinese Communist Party's government. And that gives them an advantage. Sometimes people may say unfair advantage. So this rapid expansion and the fact that they will most likely get the support that they require from their government will ensure that they don't have the sort of resistance that Starlink seems to be getting. Obviously, there are geopolitical tensions. The US-China satellite race could have major global implications, connectivity and security implications. So, question to you guys. Will SpaceCell disrupt the market as dramatically as other tech giants? Talk to me and drop your thoughts on the comment section of this video. Now we come last to my story around Africa's turning point, a call for leadership and self-reliance. I think we've all been following the stories of the rapid death of USAID within less than 3 months of Trump's taking office. He and his Doge cronies have decimated USAID. So look, guys, I mean, in the near term, this is going to be super painful. The $1 trillion question, literally, is this a blessing in disguise? While aid has funded critical projects, it has definitely stifled innovation and governance across Africa. Countries like Botswana have shown that strategic investments and good leadership can drive economic success without any aid. Is that a blueprint for other African countries? Do we need aid or do we need partnership? And on an equal footing, do we need trade? What's the path forward on this? It's crucial to first acknowledge that many communities are going to be affected. But the point for African countries now is good leadership, transparent leadership is going to be critical going forward to ensure that we are not held ransom by foreign countries who simply have their own interests at heart. And I think for me, this is a blessing in disguise. It will take a while to sink in and for us to acknowledge it, but ultimately, we're going to start churning out a new narrative. This moment called for bold leadership and a shift in mindset from survival to thriving without aid. This challenge is real, good people, but so is Africa's potential. The time to act is now, guys. And with that, I sign off for this week's weekly roundup. Asanteni sana.